The extraordinary, for me, can be a multiple of things. It can be the
Mm,
extraordinary version of ourselves. It can be the extraordinary things that we do.
mm,
It can be about our attitude. It can be um, about journeys that we've taken over a long period of time. I think extraordinary comes in many different shapes and sizes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would be some of the qualities that we would notice in someone who is extraordinary?
We are going deep. So qualities would include, it would include um, areas to do with. Oh, let me just ponder this for a moment.
Ponder that one.
I'll ponder that one. I think the ability to look within, to
Mm,
be reflective, is
yeah,
a really important quality in itself.
yeah,
Um, and it's at times when it's not necessary, as well as times when it's necessary. And I think
yeah,
that it's easy to say that now, when we've got this crisis, people are being forced into looking, or maybe they're too scared to look. So there's different times that we do actually look inside us. Um, but those who do have the extraordinary and reveal their extraordinary
mm,
are ones who will reflect internally, reflect
yeah,
on their thinking and their feelings in ways that, whether it is a crisis or not, that ability will be there for sure. Bless
excuse
you.
me. Thank you. Yeah, beautiful. So I think we're coming back to that awareness piece that we've been speaking about all day. That self awareness and that willingness to look at self and to discover self. I love how well all of the conversations are tying in, and this one just
Definitely.
seems to be bringing it together. So I know through your years you've done a number of extraordinary things in extraordinary circumstances, and extraordinary, like you've had a number of career opportunities in which you tapped into extraordinary. What would be some of the examples of where you see yourself as leveraging that extraordinary so that people can start to relate and resonate with the journey?
Mm. It's interesting, because I think one of the very first times, I would imagine, for myself, where
Mm,
I embarked on extraordinary was
mm,
when I was in my late teens and decided I was part of a very strong Polish culture,
mm,
together, and community for that matter, together with a very strong religious background.
mm,
And I had gotten to a point where I realized that neither of those two were of value to me personally.
mm,
So I needed to do something different, be something different. I needed to discover what it was that I had to do for myself. So I actually packed my bags and moved 2 states. So from Victoria, I went up to Queensland.
yeah,
Um, so that, to me, is an extraordinary feat in itself, especially for someone who was 18, 19, and in those days. So that was in the late 70s, I think I left. So it shows my age. And
I was
yeah,
just going to say,
and
it is extraordinary that willingness to step out and do something
yes,
different.
yes.
That is the act, like that's the quality of someone who is extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And look, I'd say other aspects that are connected to that are courage,
Yeah,
being brave enough to do something different to what the norm would normally expect. So
yeah,
stepping outside of the ordinary and
yeah,
being prepared to challenge myself, being prepared to see, well, what's out there, and
mm,
whatever it is, well, I'm getting myself ready for it.
yeah,
And uh, and along the journey there were many different occupations, many different career choices,
yeah,
um, so and lots of other things along the way, that I tapped into as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, in a way, it was an inner crisis that
Mm.
had me, that made me choose this, and in a sense made me or made me not, um, where I just made that decision. It
Yeah.
was, I needed to break away from this. So it was that inner crisis that had me make that decision to move. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think at the moment, a lot of us are, or not a lot of us, the entire world is facing this external,
Mm.
whether we're labeling it crisis or whether we're labeling it interesting times or we're labeling it weird and unusual.
Yeah.
But there's definitely external stuff going on around us.
Yes.
And some people are responding to that alone, and others are allowing the internal crisis to come. It sounds like you created that internal kind of catalyst for yourself without the external circumstances.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's what you touched on at the beginning. It's one thing to step up and be exceptional in the moments of crisis, but to step up and be extraordinary takes doing it without that external
Yeah.
catalyst and finding the inner, or
Yeah.
maybe with the external catalyst, but finding that inner
Yeah.
drive and that inner peace. Would that be aligned with your thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely would be. I, in a sense, crisis has many different levels, many, I mean, like 20, 30, hundreds of different levels of crisis. And
Yeah.
they happen all the time in life. Um, so we're in a sense, so what I'm trying to say here is
Mm.
that awareness again,
Mm.
to be able to recognize, well, even this conflict between me and another person
Mm.
could be considered a crisis.
Mm.
And I can choose to reflect on that and see, well, what is it that I can do differently? What is it? And we've lost Amy there for a moment. So I'll just continue on speaking here. Hello there again.
You got this. You don't need me. Rock forth.
Yeah. So we can take advantage of those little crises and see them as opportunities, or we can push them under the carpet. And I think for many of us, putting it under the carpet as being something not so important because, well, we've been doing this forever, so why should we do it any differently? Or we can take the bull by the horn and do something different for change, think differently for a change, start feeling differently for a
Yeah.
change. Mm.
I think there's so much in the choice of language. Is this a crisis or is this an opportunity? And I definitely see in you the embracing of opportunity, like putting together today came from a place of what are the opportunities here and what are
Yes.
the potentials here?
Yeah.
How does somebody else tap into that? What are the values required to help choose opportunity instead of crippling or whatever it is that they're choosing?
You know, one of the things that I think helped me with regards to this event is I made a decision and I put the idea out to a number of people, including yourself.
Yeah.
And there was so much support. And I think
Mm.
connecting with people makes a huge difference. So whether it's an event
Yeah.
such as this, or, okay, I've got a relationship issue, a conflict issue, whether it's at work or at home, and connecting with someone else who is an appropriate person, of course, who
Yeah.
can help with guiding, advising, listening, helping to elicit what it is that I could do differently, makes a huge difference. That was one aspect. So one was connecting with others. Because everyone who came on board could see the potential of this
Yeah.
and really came on with, they were 100% in on it. They could see that
Yeah.
there was possibility here. This was an opportunity. Um, so I think in ordinary circumstances, there's no difference. So
Mm.
even if we're in the workplace and there are some problems in the workplace, I can either say, well, I've got no control over this. I'm not the boss. I don't make the rules. I don't create the procedures, the structures that are in place. This isn't my business. It's not my responsibility. So why should I do anything?
Mm.
Or I can make a decision, okay, I can be a leader regardless of my position, and I can start making some changes myself. Now, I don't have to do outside changes. It's the inside changes that have to take place. And one of the wonderful catalysts that actually occurred for me, I was, I think, 30, 31.
Mm.
So that was half my lifetime ago. And I made this conscious decision, a very simple thing. I made this conscious decision. I was going to go to work, and not that I've fully achieved that always,
Mm.
but my conscious decision was not to involve myself in gossiping.
Mm.
I would cease to have the attitude of, oh, Monday again. So from my early 30s, I've always had the attitude that Monday is a very different day. Tuesday is a very different day.
Mm.
9 o'clock in the morning is a very different time to 9 o'clock any other morning. Every moment in my life is very, very different. And because I had this incredible passion around just this simple little shift, it made a huge difference to me. It made a huge difference to those people who worked around me. Now, in that particular role that I was in, I was simply working in an office.
Mm.
Special, simply working in an office. As a result of my shift in thinking,
Mm.
head of the department, I was working for a university. The head of the department invited me to facilitate workshops for the leaders of all the different departments.
Mm.
That says something.
Yeah.
So things like that have happened along the way in my life. And yeah, I find, to me, that's extraordinary. To me, it was, and I had no clue what I was doing. I just loved what I was doing. I was definitely in personal development in those days, so it was something that I was passionate about even then. But
Yeah.
yeah, having the courage to take some action is kind of like the say yes and work out how.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think that goes a hell of a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that courage to make that decision and follow through on it with commitment. And as a result of that, you attract to you people who see that leadership in you
Yeah.
and see that potential within you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then does that then flow on? So in that example you were giving, did your leadership then flow to others and they were able to step up a little bit more? Or
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, no doubt. It had to
yeah.
happen. It was kind of like, what else could they do? Because
Mm.
I wasn't being influenced by the frame that they were taking on.
Yeah.
I wasn't taking the bait.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
ended up having to take my bait.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's, as Alex said, set those standards and then just hold them, and you
Yeah.
set that standard of excellence and
Yes.
moving forward. What is it that we can tap into as leaders in this time to bring even more sort of awareness to, because not everyone's going to want to be a facilitator, not everyone's going to want to do it in that way. What is, and I guess it comes back to the awareness piece, but what is it that drives us discovering our version of extraordinary?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something that happened probably more recent years. When I was 46, I decided to join the police force.
Yeah.
Now, it may be a big deal or not a big deal to some. I had been very, very intimately involved in a meditation group. So it was basically very spiritually oriented, etc. And I had some questions and doubts and all sorts of things then. And once again, there was no blame. It was stuff that I had to work out.
Yeah.
And I decided to do something very different. So why not simply become a police officer, which I did. Um, Now, the interesting thing was that was an excellent experience. What it also taught me was it wasn't for me.
Mm.
I stuck with it for 6.5 years
Yeah.
and discovered that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
From my point of view, it was I had incredible empathy with the criminal community.
Mm.
I could see where they were coming from, and it kind of clashed with the values of the police in many ways. So I eventually left there. So I think that that was an important factor. Giving it a good go wherever I'm at. And if it's not going to work, then I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to try to make changes then. I couldn't. I chose not to for whatever reasons. I didn't have the
Yeah.
skills to do so. So I left there. And the interesting thing is, my next role ended up being um, I was invited to join a friend who was living in an Aboriginal community. She was working there. And she said, "Look, I need someone to help me." And her job was basically working for cooking and delivering meals to the elderly and the disabled in the community. I went up there. 3 days later, there was a major meeting, a special board meeting. I was invited to the meeting in the middle of the meeting, and they offered me the role of the CEO, which was very unexpected.
Mm.
And the interesting thing was I said yes straight away. And again, I thought, I have no clue. I've never been a CEO.
Yeah.
I've never been in a position of leadership like this ever, ever, ever. And I thought, well, I'm sure I'll learn.
Mm.
So now, whilst I was there, I did learn a lot. For me, I discovered some strengths of mine, and that was about
Mm.
building community. It was about bringing people together. So there was a lot of disenfranchised services within that organization, external providers that were part of the community, and there was disunity. So
Mm.
by the time I left 18 months later, the feedback I got from the priest of the school was that in the 10 years that he'd been here, this is the first time there was cooperation within the organisation, within the community.
Wow.
So it was really awesome. And
Yeah.
what I discovered was, while I was there, what I'd learned in the police force and lots of skills prior to
Yeah.
that, I was able to integrate in a much more enjoyable, easy way, because I didn't
Yeah.
have that pressure. I took it as pressure
Mm.
from the police. There were expectations that I wasn't prepared to fulfill
Yeah.
for in police force, whereas it was easier to do other things in that role. So once again, it had nothing to do with the role. It was about decisions. And I think
Mm.
making the decision that was right for me, not me being right, but the right decision at the time to give something different a try and
Mm.
see how it works. So for 18 months, it worked. So I left, and then I progressed from there as well.
Yeah.
And I think
What I'm
that's,
hearing is your incorporation of, like, along the lines you incorporated. So you didn't share how, but I imagine the meditation influenced the way you were a police officer. And then the way you were a police officer influenced the way you built the community and leveraged that. So from each of your experiences along the way, you've gathered, I want something better than resources,
yeah,
but internal traits and
yeah,
qualities and abilities and skills, and then
yes,
brought them to the next one. And I think we're
absolutely,
all doing that.
yes.
The
And
person that's extraordinary realizes it.
yeah, and I think it's also about, because I wasn't happy with just staying somewhere for the sake of staying somewhere.
Yeah.
Being in the police force for 6 years, I mean, that was a pretty huge feat for me. I
Mm.
was determined. I wanted to prove to myself that I could stay somewhere long enough to make it work. So I stayed long enough, and it didn't work so well. Uh,
Yeah.
it's Yet I also recognize that I gained a lot. I gained a huge amount from being there.
Yeah.
But it's not for me, not in the long term. And I think that when we can each look, if I'm in a job that I'm dissatisfied with, whether I'm a leader or not,
Mm.
having it simply for the sake of having a job, or having it simply because it pays me well, having it simply because that's what's expected of me, they're not good enough reasons.
Yeah.
Because in the long term, we spend a third of our lives practically in a job.
Mm.
So for me, it was, I'm not satisfied here. Let me go elsewhere.
Yeah. What I love is your attitude of acceptance and learning through the process. So many people have a bad experience and they blame, and there was a conversation I was having with someone earlier through Facebook, and he'd been let down by someone, and I shared that I'd had a similar situation, and he went, "Oh, did you just write that off?" And it's like, no, I learnt the lessons from it. And that's what I'm hearing in you
Yeah.
now is, so the police wasn't for you, but you learnt a lot from it. The meditation in its completeness wasn't for you at that time, and you learnt a lot from it. The CEO,
Yes.
you tried it, and rather than bitching and complaining, which is what so many people do when they leave a job or leave an organization,
Yeah.
you're embracing and acknowledging the value that you chose to take from it.
Absolutely.
I think that's the commendable part of someone who is extraordinary. They're not looking to be given value, but they're going to find value wherever they are.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more there. Definitely, Amy. I appreciate that. And it's interesting because in recent years, like yourself, I'd been studying coaching, and I think even from the beginning, I kind of knew that coaching individuals wasn't necessarily my thing.
Yeah.
Even though I loved everything about coaching,
Yeah.
but it wasn't my thing. So I've taken even from coaching so much in so many
Yes.
other ways. I've
Yeah.
incorporated that in ways that has enhanced my life. I've learned a lot, even taking on board this particular this event, for example. This
Yeah.
was something that without the coaching, I could not have achieved it. Without the CEO work, I could not have achieved it. Without policing, without the meditation, without all the things in my past, I could not have achieved it. What I've discovered over the time, and you don't have to have 60 years of it, my example is that everything in our past is adding some value to our extraordinary. Our
Yeah.
extraordinary is hidden within all of our past. And to be able to recognize that is something that does need that self-reflection. To be able to see that, even in the smallest thing that's happened to us or for us or, by us has value that we can take on.
Yeah. Yeah, and it comes down to that perception. Are we looking for the value, or are we looking for other stuff?
Yes, and I'm
You're
super big in
value.
and I'm so super big on that it's not about winning the race. It's not about getting to the end. It's not about having happiness. It's about the in-between bits. How well am I living every moment? And I'm not there. This is something that I'm focusing on. So really valuing and championing along the way. And that requires a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah. 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 Self-reflection, self-awareness,
Yeah.
a level of self-acceptance.
Yes.
So I think so many people choose to not find the value because they don't accept their awesomeness. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's awesome. And yes, we can complain, and I complain as well. But it's like, okay, I've got it out, done. Now what? And then I'll see, yes, they're also fantastic. They're also awesome. I love looking at people as children in adult bodies and children, especially the youngest ones, we adore them. We think they're just
Yeah.
such a delight. And we get so much joy out of recognizing, all the amazing characteristics that children have, the sense of curiosity, the imagination, the ability to take risks until they're told not to, until they're told not to be imaginative because it's wrong, until all these things. So I love to remind myself that this person that I might be disagreeing with or complaining about, they are no different to me. I don't believe that there is any vicious person on this planet. And it may cause disagreement amongst some, but even the most vicious act has been caused by someone who was a beautiful little child, and something happened along the way. So we've all had something that has happened along the way. It's about looking in between bits, great bits, the extraordinary bits that we've experienced. So seeing those instead of the negative things, because that's what we've been taught to.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I love that metaphor. There's like a pot. I think it's a Japanese pot. I got metaphors just popping up all day today. So that into the cracks they place gold.
Yes, love it, love it.
And I feel like that's kind of what you're describing. It's like,
absolutely,
except that our gold is already there. We don't need to place the gold into cracks. It's already there. It's waiting for us to notice it.
In fact, it's those cracks that reveal our extraordinary. See the cracks as being extraordinary, and the rest, that's just part of the joy of life. And I love that. Something that I remember years ago reading in a book about these 3 different stages or levels of realization. And it's actually based around crisis. And the first stage is, a crisis happens, an incident happens. It could be an accident, it could be whatever, it could be a pandemic. And what happens is, we get so caught up and feeling miserable and sorry for ourselves, and all these negative emotions can come up. And then maybe, months or could be years even down the track, or never. But for most people, or many people, years down the track, we look back and say, I'm so glad that happened, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be where I'm at the moment. Now, that's one level of realization. Before that, there is another level, but there's no realization there. So the next level is we're in a crisis and we know we're going to experience some sort of benefit at some point. Don't know what it is yet. I know that there is something there, something of value. And so we do see it sometime down the track. And you say, yep, I was right. Yep, there was going to be some benefit out of this. And then the third level is where a person is in that crisis and they're almost like feeling it. They're feeling the extraordinary. They're seeing the future as a result of this crisis. And that's the stage where I love being in. And it's kind of like we're merging the future with our present moment. Could be a bit airy-fairy, but anyway, I'm trusting you're picking up on what I'm trying to say here. And I think that that's where extraordinary lies. So with self-reflection, stepping back, being separate from the incident, because it's outside of ourselves anyway, and seeing what extraordinary is there at this point in time. What can I see now? What can I discover right now that is there right now that I can create for my future? Where can I see my future being and bring it into the present?
I love that. So there's a level where maybe in the future we notice looking back, and then there's the middle level where we notice, where we have awareness in the moment but we don't notice it, and then that third level we notice in the moment the awesomeness. I love that.
Yeah, it is cool. It's very very cool, and it's weird, but I get excited about it. So when this happened, yes, it's devastating, all sorts of things. They're still outside of us. And the only thing that we've got any control over is what's going on inside of us at that time. And another metaphor, um,
Yeah.
you've been on those roundabout things when kids, kind of like a
I like a merry-go-round.
kind of a merry-go-round, but it's a flat one, not a sort of a
Yeah.
one. Okay, and it's got a platform, and you push yourself around.
Oh, yeah, I get what you mean. Yep.
Yeah. And there's usually bars there, and you hold on to it. When you go fast enough, you go whizzing around, and it's, quite a thrill, but it can be scary for some people. And you see the world going so fast. Now, the interesting thing, the best part for me was pulling myself into the center and then standing with my back to the center, right as far as I could in the middle. And it was interesting, when I looked outwards, the world was going by actually very, very slowly. Because when you're in the middle, it's kind of like the eye of the storm. You actually see things how they really are, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And that's another aspect. So the more we are inside of our own headspace and are tuned into what's going on around us, the more we're able to see things clearer, see things as they kind of are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I love that. I love that. What do you see in these levels of crises that leaders can take away from this?
For leaders, and it's interesting because I connected to something that Simon Sinek recently said in one of his recent books and seminar around the book. And he said, our responsibility is to take care of the people whose responsibility is to do the job. So our job is not to take care of their work. Our job is to take care of the people.
Yeah.
So I connect that in that way. And the only way we can really recognize the value of that by stepping inside of us again, because I think control is such an external thing. Letting go of control and helping people be more aware of their responsibilities, or be more aware of how to take responsibility, and the reason why they need to take responsibility is far more valuable than than trying to get them to do the job. And it requires us to be self-reflective, to be more aware of what's going on the inside. I, how to actually do that means we've got to become the observer of our own thoughts. We've got to stand on that mountaintop and see what's going on around us, that's on the inside of us, how we respond to things. Am I getting caught up as a vulture on the ground, or am I the butterfly that's spreading its wings after having escaped its cocoon, and am living my life as a beautiful winged creature?
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. So what's next for you? So today has been amazing, and I'm loving the speakers that you've brought together. I've certainly loved my opportunity to facilitate and converse. I'm curious, for anybody watching, what's next on this platform, in this arena? Where are we headed as a group?
Yeah, I know, it's really exciting. I've I've already been doing some thinking around that.
Yeah.
And there's got to be some more discussion. My thinking at this stage would be that these events would happen either as full day events on a monthly basis, or half day events twice a month.
Yeah.
But we'll see. The other aspect, this is an opportunity. To me, this is an opportunity for people to get access to learnings, to trainings, where basically it doesn't cost them anything. It means then it becomes accessible to so many more people. It's obviously it's something that I want to take further than that. So this
Yeah.
is, again, through our discussions some time ago, we'd like to see this as potentially being a speakers bank. And there are other aspects too. I'd like to see facilitators being part of it as well. And there's another level that I'm considering. But again, it's something that needs to be discussed. But it becomes a resource, especially for the online world these days. The online platform is bigger than it's been, and it's not going to change much when things go back to normal.
Yeah.
It's still going to be a need. For one reason, people, businesses, companies will see how valuable it is at this point in time.
Yeah.
I can envisage lots of changes taking place, and this becomes an opportunity for many people, many people, individuals as well as businesses.
Yeah, certainly the theme through today that shone in all of the presenters was make sure we have access to the tools and the resources. And so putting together a resource library is an amazing gift.
Yeah.
What else is coming up that you would like to share that would add value or bring to those watching now and potentially watching the recordings later? What else would you love to bring to them right now?
In terms of this, being a leader in times of crisis, again, I would like to simply stress that being a leader takes action. It takes making that decision that I want to make a difference, whether I'm in a role of leadership. And, it's interesting because I saw all the registrations, and we asked a question, was what is the role that you're in currently? Some of them, there were actually a number of them that said that they were mothers. A number of them said that they were sole business owners. Some of them said that they were coaches. And the next question was, how many people, if you're in a leadership role, how many people do you lead? How many people in your team? And mothers, every single mother simply said no, or not applicable. Coaches, not applicable. Sole business owners, not applicable. And yet for me, we each, mothers in particular, for fuck's sake, seriously, believe it not, I've not been a mother. And to me, the greatest leaders, in my opinion, are mothers, parents, fathers. They have an incredible role to play. A sole business owner, it's not just me and the thing I'm selling. There's more to it. I've got clients, I've got suppliers, I've got connections, even my leads. Every person that we come into contact with is someone who can look up to us in the right kind of way. So setting that example, being a model of excellence, being someone who shows others how to take responsibility, how to stay committed, these are all examples of leadership that we can do whether we have someone in our team physically or not. Nothing should stop any of us from becoming a leader, and we can be inspired by ourselves. We can be inspired by others. Others will be inspired by us. So everyone here on this platform, I mean, why did they come here? It wasn't just out of curiosity. It was because they could learn something so that they can add to their own toolkit of leadership. So we can all get out there and be that leader that we know we are each capable of being.
Yeah. I suspect, may I share something?
Please do.
Because I know I definitely wrote not applicable on that question when I was testing it, partly because I wasn't paying a huge amount of attention to it. I was testing the form rather than actually engaging with the form. something prompted me, and as you started speaking, I think it was probably that question. And so for the past week or so, I've been reflecting on not so much who is in my team, but who am I responsible for in some way. And so I've been reflecting on, and I think that's, for me, the quality of the leader. It's that we take a level of responsibility and ownership for someone else's, not so much success. I love that quote that you brought about like being there for them as people. And I've been checking in with myself, like, who are my people right now and who am I responsible for? And at the top of that list is definitely my kids, and then my husband, and then sort of my inner circle, and then my clients, and I've got a bunch of students that I'm working with. But when I reflect on that number, it's up at about 50. And I acknowledge at the moment I'm taking on a lot, and not everyone's number will be that high. It's not the point. But there is always, even if it's just the neighbour down the road that you're checking in on, or your mother that you call to ask about, or the random lady that you say hello to at the school pickup. Anyone where we've got that connection and we take a level of responsibility and awareness of the relationship, we're in that leadership position.
Yes.
And even where it's reciprocal, it's still a level. So my husband and I are definitely reciprocal, but there's still a level of leadership and ownership in that. Absolutely. I think that's such a great, I think it's the conversations with you that have reframed that in my mind.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
And I think that's useful for others to bring awareness to, that there are, even if we don't feel like, this goes back to what Alex was saying, even if we don't feel like we're, she didn't use the word coercing, I can't remember the word she used, but if we've built the connection, if we're communicating and connecting, we're influencing, and instantly that makes us leaders. And I love that. And I love where you've taken this direction of leaders and what you're setting up for leaders in all walks of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So leaders in business, leaders in teams, leaders in families, leaders in relationships. There's so much potential for this.
And it's interesting because something that I'm involved with on a certain level, and that is in social media. It's interesting, there's different mentalities behind the purpose of social media. I see social media as, again, an opportunity to be a leader, regardless of how well, or if I know my connections at all, if I know anyone who responds. And how I interact on social media, I think, is really important too. I take care of another group where we have people focusing on LinkedIn in particular. And it's one of the hardest thing I find. I think that this whole thing of, because when we're networking in person, I think also there is that attitude that I'm here to get business. Social media, it's also the same. I'm here to get business, something for me. And I think that this differentiates a leader from others, and that is they're not there for themselves. Yes, of course, we're looking for ultimately getting some return, but our intention in the first instance is, what value can I give? And I think that is one of the most important factors, I would say, that I should have mentioned earlier on. What value can I give to this person that's in front of me? Whether it's a person I know, whether it's a person that I've come into contact with through social media, how can I give value? If it means to listen, and that's value, then I listen. So how I behave in any circumstance will be a reflection on how I behave elsewhere. If I'm having a shitty time at work, I can tell you that will be reflected in our home life in some way. So again, how I can change in some way in the workplace, I will begin to take that into my home life. I will take that onto my social media platforms. I will take that into various groups that I'm a part of, etc.